Welcome, all of you. You can tell that we're starting right on the hour because my clock is going off. I forgot to turn off the clock, so we're going to hear this for a few minutes. But thank you so much, all of you, for wanting to join in, and people who listen later. Got another great topic to discuss with Gwen from your Grief Guide. So welcome to Gwen.
Thank you.
So Gwen, we've been talking many times now over the past 2.5 years since I've been doing the podcast. You've come on really often, and we touch on the topic of faith often. It's not a uncommon thing for us to talk about. But one thing that we've never done is talk about it through an entire episode and just really focus on faith and where is God in my grief. So I just really wanted to do that today. And it turns out it ended up being like perfect timing, I think, for me. So I'm going to tell you all why it's perfect timing and why God probably worked it out this way to be perfect timing. So Gwen knows this, but last week, Friday and Saturday, was the Grand Rapids Choir of Men and Boys concert series, their Lenten concert series. And I wanted to go. Eric was on call, unfortunately. So I asked Peter if he wanted to go. The two of us are going to go together. And I was not excited for it, but wanting to go anyway. So, and I feel like grieving parents can understand this a little bit, that when I go to these concerts, I feel Andy. I feel him. I close my eyes. I can hear him. I close my eyes. I see him standing in the front row, singing his heart out. It almost feels like a holy kind of experience for me because they're singing this spiritual music. It's old music. It's in that old British choral Men and Boys choir tradition. It's all faith-based. It's beautiful. I knew that they were going to sing the Miserere. It's very famous to people that know old music, but they sing that every year at the Lenten concert. And Andy had a solo in that the year before he died. And in fact, when we had, before the visitation for Andy, the very first time I had seen him after he died, he was in the funeral home in the casket, and they had that song playing and him singing the solo. I mean, they didn't know. I just gave them that music to be playing, the choir music to be playing during the time. And so they had just started it ahead of time. And it was on that song with
my word.
In that moment, right? I know I've never shared that with you before. I've never.
No.
But it was very moving, to be hearing him sing that in that moment when I saw him. So I knew that song was going to be sung. So I knew it was going to be hard. I opened up the program. Very front page is a little thing about Andy, a whole page, because they are next year going to have the now first Andy Larson Memorial Concert will be next year. It was supposed to be, in 2020, every 2 years. And now the first one will be 2023, but they had a little synopsis. And so that got me kind of emotional. And then the director stood up in front and said, not only will we be doing our normal Lenten readings for this concert, but we will also be reading excerpts from the book Lament for a Son and discuss the pain of losing a son. And we have the author of that book here, Nicholas Walterstorff, and his wife are in the audience. So if any of you remember that I got 8 copies of one book after Andy died, it was Lament for a Son. I got 8 copies of that book. And to have it just announced that was going to be a topic there, I literally could not breathe. I was completely like hyperventilating, almost choking. Peter's grabbing my hand. I think he's thinking, what's happening to her? She can't breathe at all. It was unbelievable. It was awful, right? I mean, awful. And I'm sitting there not knowing what to do, not knowing whether to run. I'm in the back row. I mean, I sat in the back row on purpose. But I'm thinking about just fleeing. And what should happen? But a friend of mine walks in with her son, who's a year older than Peter, a year younger than Andy. They sang in the choir together all these years. He walked in, and Charlie sat down right beside Peter, and his mom scooted all the way in, sat beside me, took my head, laid it on her shoulder, and let me sob on her shoulder. And I thought, in the horribleness of that, God sent her right there when I needed it, right? I needed someone right there because I was panicking. And this was going to be way harder than I thought. And it's like God knew and put her there just late enough that she had to end up sitting in the back row, and she could see me completely fall apart. I mean, there were 3 or 4 people that turned around and were staring at, what's this crazy sounds coming from the back row.
Right.
So anyway, I just wanted to bring that up. And then throughout the service, of course, it's difficult, right? There are all these readings about losing a son and the pain of losing a son. It's unbelievable. And then it gets to the second to the last song, and they sing a song entitled "In My Father's House," which is the song they sang at every concert the year after Andy died, dedicated to him. And it was supposed to be the opening song on the CD that they were releasing in Andy's name that never got released because of COVID. They only had 80% of it completed before the shutdown, and haven't finished it yet. So anyway, it was overwhelming, but to have her there, I just felt like God sent her there to me. And then as I'm listening at the end to "In My Father's House," and then the very last song was called "The Road Home," and all I kept thinking about was heaven and how I just wanted to be there.
Yeah.
I was just so sad, and I was so tired, and I just was in so much pain. I thought to myself, why can't I just be there?
Yeah.
So that's why I thought it ended up being perfect. That I had that kind of weekend and that kind of like struggle with faith and feeling all this pain, but ultimately feeling like just this longing for heaven, that this ended up being the right time to have this talk with you.
Yeah. We have so many more reasons to go to heaven for than we had before, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
It takes on a whole different meaning.
Yeah. And it's so funny because I was sitting there at the end, listening to those songs, thinking about how I just wanted to be in heaven. And I thought to myself, but who can I say that to? Who's not going to like panic and that I'm actively suicidal? And I thought of you, actually. I thought I could probably call Gwen. She would know that I'm not like,
right.
And
but look,
it's just those things. Anyway.
You're getting the love here from some of your listeners. I feel that.
Thank you, ladies.
Too. The hearts and the things. There's probably not a bereaved mom or dad on the planet that doesn't say they get that. That heaven is just. Your heart's there. That's what happened. Part of your heart is there, and it's there in a different way than before your child died.
Yeah.
So this topic of what happens, I was writing down some words as you were talking. The where, the questioning, where is God? And that separation, and just some of the things that you talked about. And we'll get to the cool part about, you seeing God by your friend coming in and being there for you. But it is a totally natural response in whatever our faith relationship is with our higher power, whatever we believe, that it's usually a relationship. And what happens is whatever your faith is, there's things that you do, prayers, meditations, worship, through music, readings, whether it's scripture, you have a book that you read. So there's things that we do. So that's kind of like our giving to our God and what we believe in. And then there's ways that God gives to us, however we hear him speak, where we feel close to him, and what he uses to speak to us. So Go
Well,
ahead.
and that's what I was going to say, and that's what I sometimes hear from people feeling like they don't they don't feel that. They don't feel that
In their
back
grief?
because you're just in their grief, right? Because
Oh,
you're feeling
absolutely.
so incredibly alone. And I think about
100%.
even those moments when I was in there before my friend Carrie sat down beside me, that I was feeling incredibly alone and just panicked. And so
Mhm.
that's why I thought about this too, is that some people do just feel that. They feel like, where has God? I thinking back to now Lenten, my
Mhm.
God, why have you forsaken me? Right?
Oh,
You feel
absolutely.
completely forsaken. Where have you gone? You've
Mhm.
abandoned me.
Oh,
And that,
absolutely.
I think those are normal kind of feelings.
Oh, no matter how strong our faith is or what we believe, when something bad happens, and I have a visual for you, but before I get to that, it's like, so we have this relationship and the give and take, right? But
Hmm.
when something bad happens, it doesn't change who God is, but it severs our ability to see him in any of this because we can't see anything but the pain. So
Right.
God to us is almost, some people I can't it's not happening right now. And I've talked to some
Right.
bereaved parents who are like, I'm not even thinking about my faith right now. Like that's
Hmm.
so far, removed from me. It kind of reminds me, I tell this story of a story I heard once of a husband and wife who were at a traffic light. And the wife looked over and she saw another couple sitting very close to each other. And she said to her husband, Do you remember we used to sit like that, like all snuggled together in the car? And she said, I kind of miss that. And she said, What happened to us? And he looked at her and he said, Well, I'm in the same seat. You're the one who moved. And so her husband didn't change his position. She had
Right.
changed hers. But it's kind of like we look and go, God, what happened? But he didn't go anywhere.
Hmm.
But our vision is clouded. I'm going to try to just share a screen.
Yeah,
Um,
I've got to switch something too. I'm going to switch
okay.
us to small and then you share
And
your
then
screen because this
I'm
is a
going
beautiful visual
to,
for all of you to
right.
see.
I'm going to hit window and then share. Oh, how come it's not coming up? Okay, share. Rats.
It's coming.
It
Oh,
is.
it's not coming.
No, it's not the big one. It shrunk while we were
Just click
just a
on it
minute.
again.
I will. There we go. Can you see that or
Nope,
not yet? Well, let
not
me
yet.
put it full screen. Can you see that?
Nope, I can
Okay.
only see it
All right.
tiny.
Okay.
It
Well,
is
let
a
me try
beautiful
one
visual.
other thing. Yes. So basically, we'll stop that because I'm not tech savvy. So it's just better if I describe it. But it's this visual of envisioning that relationship. And as I talked about, the give and take, but all we can see is the pain.
Yeah. It
And
was this
so
beautiful
that's
visual of God on top, a big circle
yeah.
with God, a circle below with you, and then in the middle, so you can't, God
No.
like can't see
No.
you and you
Mm-mm.
can't see God. It just says pain. So
Yeah.
that was the thing, that everything as you look to God, all you see and feel is
Yeah.
pain.
Mhm. We don't feel the love or the care because it feels like if you cared about me, I wouldn't be in this much pain.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
people we love don't do that, but, that's part of why that relationship gets severed for a time, or we wonder where God is, and we start questioning those things.
Mhm. Mhm.
But
Well,
to
I remember thinking to myself, getting really angry with God, because that's another thing that
oh,
I think is really normal, to
mhm,
get really angry with God. And one thing I kept telling myself, and my pastor kind of did too, is that, okay, as long as you're still angry with God, you're still okay because
yeah,
we're still in relationship,
right,
right?
yeah,
It
exactly,
what scared me is if I suddenly wasn't angry with God, because that means
mhm,
I wouldn't be feeling any feelings toward God. And if that starts to happen, then I feel like, oh gosh, then the faith must be going.
right, that I've
Right,
lost
because
it
then I
all,
feel
right,
like he doesn't have control,
mhm,
and if he doesn't, and anything, and
mhm,
then that's when I lose my faith more.
yeah,
So that was what I
yeah,
told myself. I told myself it was better to be angry than to feel nothing. So that's
right.
kind of what I kept doing.
So what I tell people is we tend to look up like, God, where are you? And in those moments of pain, when we can't see that, what I tell people is to look to your left and look to your right more often. And that's where you can see those God moments of who he sends, that friend
Carrie.
who sits
Yeah.
next to you. Exactly. And puts your hand. Now, some people who listen right now, Marcy, might be really jealous because you were crying out, your heart was aching, and you got that friend, and you can see that as God. Sometimes the wait's a long time.
Yeah.
But the other thing is sometimes we get it, but we don't see it for what it is. You were so in tune to, that you could see right away, wow, God cares about me because he sent this person. But you're
Although I don't know
also
that I really thought about it much until afterwards, to be
Mhm.
honest, because I
Right.
was in
Oh,
such a
yeah.
panic, feeling
Mhm.
like I need to get out of here. I need to, and
Mhm.
then it took that panic kind of away, but I didn't think about it for what it
Right.
was
That makes sense.
until afterwards.
Right. But what I was gonna say is you're also, a few years out that if you remember back on in those first, months and year or so, you might not have seen that as a God moment or a
Yeah.
God wink or whatever, but
Well, and honestly, I told you I cried all day up until the concert too, right? And the reason
Mhm.
I did that is because I thought back to those first concerts. The first concerts after Andy died,
Mhm.
when 10 people would show up with me,
Mm.
and they were
Mm.
all just going to be there,
Yeah.
right?
And you think, "Where did they
And
go?"
I got to this point and I thought, well, Eric can't go. I can ask my friend Michelle. But
Mhm.
I thought I really don't think I can ask anyone else. I actually thought of asking Carrie. I did.
Mhm.
But then I was like, but my friend Michelle had other plans and so she couldn't go. And I kind of got the point where I don't have anyone else to ask anymore. I It used to be that people would have just been there. They just would have been
Mhm.
there. But as it's further out, you feel like other people have just moved on,
Yeah.
right? And they're
Well, you
not
don't just
going
feel
to
it, they
just
have.
they have
Yeah.
moved on.
Mhm,
They
let's be
have.
honest. Yeah.
And friends that I had before, I'm not going to ask to do that with me
Mhm.
because I don't know. I just don't feel
Yeah.
like I can anymore.
Yeah. And
And
we
it was
can and
fortunate
maybe
that Carrie did anyway.
Yeah, that's awesome. And some of our new friends or the friends the bereaved moms relationships you've developed, if people know someone probably would have come with you. And I told you, being your friend now, in that relationship that we have now, I wrote on a sticky note right here on my
Yeah,
desk,
yeah.
check with Marcy this week about the concert. And then that day came and I thought, you know what? Why bring that up? Like, I don't even know if it's tough for her. I don't want to be that person like, oh, this should be really hard for you. And I threw out the note that I felt horrible that I didn't do that. I could dig in my trash and find the note right now.
Well, and
Um,
what's so funny is that I was talking to Pastor Gail. You and I
yeah.
both know him. I was talking to
Mhm.
him today, and I had said that. I said, and what's funny is that Gwen wrote herself a note to
Yeah.
check on me that day, and then she didn't. And he said,
Mhm.
sometimes it's God nudging us to do those things and write those notes. And I said, well, I think God did nudge her, and then she just decided to throw it away. So now
Well,
we know.
and I shouldn't doubt when I get that, reach out to someone, but sometimes I think as the grief I slipped into like I didn't want to slip from friend to grief like
Yeah,
the
right.
boundaries with I didn't know, and so I overanalyzed it, which I'm an overthinker, and I threw it out. Um, I do wanna dig
Uh,
it out just so you can see it.
so
Um,
so I can have proof that you really were
yes,
thinking
yeah,
about me. Yeah.
I
Okay.
will. Um, but so that looking around and someone wrote that here, looking around to the signs. So you might not see God, but I've had people say to me at the moment I needed a meal, we were hungry and the doorbell rang and someone dropped off food and they didn't know that was God. Like
Yeah.
that's the hand and feet of Jesus, loving on people and doing that. So look around and say, where can I see this? But
Well, and I have one more example that I'm
Mhm.
going to give
Yep.
just from this week that I told you about a little bit ago. So I cried Friday, Saturday, and
Yeah.
Sunday. Just
Yep.
cried the whole weekend. And then I talked to you Sunday afternoon. But Monday morning, I woke up to an Instagram message from this woman who I don't know. But it's funny because back in December, I kept getting these emails saying, an employee of Google wants to donate to your Always Andy's Mom tragedy or charity. Please
Mhm.
register with benevity.com. And I thought it was a scam. I did not think this was like a real person. I thought, I don't know anyone from Google who works at Google. I don't, and turns out it wasn't. So I had gotten a message then several weeks later, like, I've been trying to donate money through Google because they give us money at the end of the year. And I really wanted to donate, but you're not set up through Benevity. And so I had written back and I said, I totally thought it was a scam. I will do that now.
Mhm.
And so then randomly, but not randomly, she writes to me on Monday and saying, I've never lost a child. I'm not a religious person. I'm not spiritual at all, but you have really touched me. I have learned a lot from you. I really want to support your podcast
Wow.
financially. I feel like it's the least I can do because I've learned so much from you.
Mhm.
And I wrote back to her, and I said, I have been crying for 3 days. And I just woke up this morning to go to work, which I wasn't real excited about doing.
Mhm.
And that is just what I needed. And I said, you may not be a religious person, but God just used you
Yeah.
right there.
Mhm.
Because I needed that encouragement in that moment to help me get up and go to
Mhm.
work and put a smile on my face to try to help people after I just spent the last 3 days crying.
Mhm.
So it's amazing how this non-religious person could be God's hands and
Mhm.
feet to me because she was God's hands and
I
feet.
know. And
So,
then look at us. I will not tell you this long story, but I did something really bad when my daughter was an infant and my friend's daughter was or son was an infant. I locked them in a car on a night when the wind was 24 below 0 and uh, they were locked in the car with yeah.
and you
So
couldn't get in.
no, and we were
So
at a
you
store.
accidentally locked them and you're like, ah,
Yeah,
okay.
and the mall, I'm going too deep, but they tried bringing help, no one had the right tools, and I just cried out to God, "I need help now." And this man started going into the mall, and I looked at him and I said, "You're related to a guy that I know. Aren't you so and so's brother?" And he said, "Yes." I said, "You just look just like him. I need help. My husband's a firefighter with your brother, and I need help right now." And he was the Delta Township fire chief at the time. He radioed for help. I had cops and fire trucks in seconds. And later I told him in my panic and my sheer, like, getting these kids out of the car, they had been in there about 36 minutes at
Yeah.
when they got them out. Um, and I said, "I prayed for you. I asked God and bam, you appeared." And he kind of looked at me and he goes, "I was just going to the mall. Like,
Yeah.
please don't make that big of a deal about it." I was just going to the mall and I'm like, "No, God brought you here and that I recognized you and you're Italian and you look
I mean, that's
exactly like your
exactly why
brother."
you got that exact parking spot. We were walking in
Yes,
this exact
exactly.
moment. You may have been going to the mall, but this was all orchestrated,
Yes,
right?
exactly. Here is oops, I'm
No.
not
Oh, you
good.
got to move it.
My note, Marcy, choir,
Concert.
concert.
Very good. Yes, I believe
That was
you.
it.
I did
Yep.
believe you before, but
Well,
that's
I
funny you brought it
moved
out of the
and
trash.
wiggled all around and got it out of the trash, but, so those kinds of moments, and I think, Marcy, I've had episodes where we talked about meaning making and share, meanings or good stories where you see your child and feel connected. But one of the things, if people have any of these moments, they could write in some God winks or some moments where they were at their end and they weren't,
Yeah.
trusting or believing and felt abandoned. And then something poured into their life or someone, a note, a card, a text, you know, a friend next to you at a concert. We'd love to hear those. I mean, I think that
Yeah.
would be really neat.
Yeah, I do too. It'd be great to write in. And if anybody has any
Yeah.
questions for Gwen or for me, that would
Yeah,
be good to ask some questions too. We'd love that.
I would love that.
Hmm.
Because, I could talk about this forever and I do have a few other points to bring up, but I do think that, hearing from the people what they want to know. Um, it's interesting because when we were talking about, people who might not necessarily be religious, my office at the funeral home was directly above the chapel, probably
Hmm.
because I didn't move around a lot. I wasn't, so they gave me the quiet office above the chapel. So I heard funerals every day, the
Hmm.
songs, the scripture, I could hear them. And I can't tell you I could make a guess that 89.9% of funerals use the 23rd Psalm, whether
Right.
they're religious or not. I've heard
Yeah.
the 23rd Psalm every day of my
Mhm.
life. I know it by heart. But what's interesting is that people use that, and there's just so much about when we're hurting in that.
Mhm.
And one of the key things that I always like to point out is, verse 4, I think it is. Yeah. But yeah, I think it is. I gotta,
Well, you
says,
better read it now. You have
well,
it?
I
I
do.
will pull it
I
up.
mean, I know it by heart.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want, those,
Right,
but
right, right.
okay. So it says he makes me, now I'm, it says, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death. That I
Mhm.
think I'm getting to my Bible here, verse, did, what, the 23rd Psalm. I have dyslexia. I was on the 34th. Okay.
Okay.
Here
I
we
got
go.
it too.
The Lord is my shepherd, I shall lack nothing. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He restores my soul. He guides me in paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. Now, the part that I like about verse 4 is it says, I will walk through the valley. It doesn't say we're stuck there. It
Yeah.
doesn't say that we have to be there forever, that things in life are a process. I mean, we don't stay young forever. We don't stay in one household forever. Oftentimes, we don't stay in a job forever. People don't stay close forever. There's a lot of things in life that move. But the one
Mhm.
thing that I just find hope in this is that we don't stay in the depths of our pain forever, that it's something we go through. And then I wrote my Bible, why it says the valley of the shadow of death is it says, until we die, we don't go right into it. We're not
Mhm.
into it. We're in the shadow. That's where we are
Oh,
when
I
we're
see.
bereaved. Yeah. But all that, the stuff, and then the comfort comes after that. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. But I think it's encouraging to know that it's a process that we go through.
Well, and I know that I talked about how I got little bits of encouragement, but I also said that I cried for 3 days. So
Right.
I was I really was down for a long time. I
Right.
mean, I was feeling like I was in the depths for a long time.
Right.
It was a hard times to go through. I'm glad that I did, and there's no question I still did feel Andy there.
Mhm.
I did feel him, and it was also interesting. I got to meet with Nicholas Waltersdorf and his wife
Mhm.
after the concert. I had the director introduce us, and he's a very sweet man, 90 years old now,
Yeah.
and his wife. And it's funny because I said to him, "I got 8 copies of your book after my son died," and he said, "Oh, that wasn't good for you. That was too early
Mhm.
for you." And I thought, what a great thing for him to say because guess
Mhm.
what? It was too early for me, and
Mhm.
I didn't really like it at the time
Mhm.
when I read
Mhm.
it. Now Eric loved it. He got a ton out of it. I did
Mhm.
not. I did
Right.
not. But and it was one of those things like, so I have to tell this man that I got 8 copies of his book, but I couldn't actually finish reading it at
Mhm.
the time. Like, how do I
Well,
say that to this man?
he
But
gets it though.
But he got it. He got it
Mhm.
at the very beginning. He said that to me. "Oh, that
Mhm.
was too early for you." He, like, apologized for people giving me the book in the days after my son died
Mm.
because and he was 100% right. I mean, everybody they give you all these books because they, like, want to give you something to make it better,
Mhm. Mhm.
when in all actuality, it just isn't better. I
Mhm.
mean, I went up to him, I was all crying,
Oh, I was thinking
and
to
he
myself,
said,
imagine how you looked at that point after the
oh, yeah, it
concert.
was terrible.
You had to
And
know.
he looked at me, he put his hand on my shoulder and he said, "Oh, just cry. It's
Yeah.
okay to cry. Just
Yeah.
keep crying." I mean, he like told me to cry. And then
Mhm.
his wife said, and then I said, "I didn't know you were going to be here or any of this was going to happen today." And his wife said, "Would it have helped had you known?" And I said, honestly, I probably wouldn't have come.
Mhm. Right.
Which they were totally okay with that too.
Yeah.
It just was it it was really just so nice because even though they lost their son, I mean, how many years ago has it been
It
now?
was
I
a
mean,
long time.
many,
That book,
many, many
I've
years
had
ago.
that book
He,
forever.
yeah, I mean, their son was in his 20s when he died, like 24 maybe. So they were probably maybe around 50. So it's been
Mhm.
40
40
years
years.
probably for these people.
Mhm.
And yet, and she even said, it never goes away, honey.
Yeah.
It never totally goes away.
Well, that's
It'll
what I was gonna
always be
say,
there.
that they probably saw you coming in your face and they already knew, bereaved mom,
Yeah, and
bereaved
they
mom.
did,
Yeah.
and the
Mhm.
director said, "This is the mom of the chorister
Oh.
that you know about."
Mm. Okay.
So, I mean, because everyone knows about the chorister who
Yeah.
died, right?
Mhm. Yep.
Mhm,
So, one of the other things that's interesting about, scripture is it says that, like Matthew 5:4 says, "Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted." And then we just read from the 23rd Psalm that, you know, um, the comfort comes after the mourning. So, like you just said, you had 3 days of mourning before the comfort came.
mhm. And I
You
get little bits of comfort in the middle, right? I
Yeah,
mean, I got
right, yeah.
Carrie coming in, the Walterstorps were very comforting and
Oh, right.
nice, but I still went home and continued to
Yeah.
cry, and the next day,
Mhm.
cried all day, didn't wanna go to church. That's a funny thing too because
Oh,
I I think about, like, right afterwards and me thinking and saying to Eric, "We have to keep going to church because I'm afraid if I stop going to church, I will never go back."
mhm.
Um, and what's funny is that I've got some people that I work with that go to my church, and they weren't at church last week, and they've just been, I mean, since the pandemic
Right.
that you can watch online, and so hardly a
Mhm.
lot of people don't go, and so I said, "I missed you in church yesterday," and she said, "Oh, it's just so easy to just stay.
Mhm.
And we've got to start getting in the habit of going." And I said, "Oh, I get that because after Andy died, I kept thinking to myself, I have to keep going because if I don't keep going, if I
Mhm.
stop, I feel like I'll never start again." And then I
Mhm.
feel like I guilted her into going this week because she's like, "I'll be there next week." And I thought, "Oh my word, that's not what I meant."
Yeah.
But then after I'm feeling so down the next day, I thought, well, now I know they're going to go. So now I feel like I have to go. And even though I mean, I cried for 20 minutes in the
Yeah.
shower before I went that day. I mean,
Yeah. Yep. Well, and
it's just
your
challenging.
point is that sometimes people don't feel like going, and that's the other thing we wanna talk about, is that you don't necessarily have to go, or
Yeah, you're
you
right.
go to a
You're right.
different service, you maybe sit in a different spot. I know especially for families and well, everyone who's bereaved, if they worshiped with their person, there's that empty
Hmm.
space, right?
Hmm.
There's so many memories there, and so sometimes sitting in a different spot, but for a widow, I always tell them maybe find someone else to sit with because they feel so all alone during church, but, um and even if we don't feel like it, go anyway, because practicing something that we know is good for us and good for our soul. So many people exercise even when they don't feel like it because they know it's good for them. Many people ate
Hmm.
a salad today and had a really healthy dinner tonight, not because they felt like it, um, but we ate it because we know it's good for us. So
Hmm.
going to our place of worship and practicing what our faith tells us to practice is good for us even when we don't feel like it.
Well, and you can do that not like you said, not in the exact same way. So, for
Mhm.
example, I could not, I still have problems with the sharing of the peace. We do this sharing of the peace at church.
Okay.
And I really, really, really don't like it now. I
Mhm.
don't. I feel like it's just you're shaking somebody's hand and they're already looking at the next person, peace of the Lord be with you. And you're already looking to find the next person and you're not really meaning it at all. It's just
Mhm.
like,
Mhm.
it's just habit or I don't know. It bothers me and I don't like it. So
Okay.
what I would do, what I started going is before the sharing of the piece, I would leave. I would leave
Okay.
and I would hide. I would hide in the kitchen. I would hide in the bathroom. Hide. I would hide somewhere. And
Mhm.
um, and then after that was done, then I would come back. but I just felt like that's what I could do. And occasionally things would get so bad that I would leave entirely and
Yeah.
go up to a different part of the church. And yeah, yeah,
Yeah, that those are coping things. I wanna go back to 2 things that, our viewers have said. Candace said, "My faith really helped me." And
yeah.
it's interesting because some people, it really does feed into them, and there is no severing of the relationship, and they don't have a hard time with that. But we wanted to start out by recognizing that for some people, if there is that block there, kind of thing. But for some people, it it just stays solid all the way through, and it just gives life and breath to them, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
And we're so thankful for that, and the hope that it gives us. And Sandy, comment here, try being the organist and crying while playing, not easy.
Oh, I
Um,
know. I know. I was thinking about that too.
well,
Well,
and
I was one of the vocalists for the worship
mhm,
band, and I
yeah,
didn't do that for 3 years.
yeah,
So, and you don't have a choice when you're the organist, because that's like a position. It's not like somebody can fill in for you.
right.
For me, somebody else just had to do it because I
Hmm.
couldn't do it. There's no way I could do it. Um, 3 years later, I could, but you're as
Yeah,
the organist, you're kind of stuck.
yeah. Well, we had a pastor speak at a Starlight event one time, and he shared that after his daughter died by suicide, that it was the year anniversary of her death fell on a Sunday, and no one else recognized it. And he, kind of just got in that position. Well, no one's, offering for me to have the Sunday off. No one's really remembering. I should just, do it.
Yeah.
Blah, blah, blah. And he said it was horrible. It was
Oh, I'm sure.
horrible to have to be up there and to minister to all the people when his heart on the 1-year anniversary was so broken. So many times when we're in a point of service, and serving at our place of worship, it does make it very hard when we need to take a break, or it's too hard for us to go. Um, and I do tell people, and I don't know Sandy's situation and other people's, but sometimes when we are in charge of something and we're bereaved, we have to ask to kind of step back for a time because it's too hard to maintain the level of serving and ministering to others that we had before. So
Hmm.
it's not wrong to take a break from that too. Just say it.
Well, no, if you can, it's
Yeah.
just
Mhm.
if you can't, that's
Right.
really hard too. I mean, I think too, back our very first Easter after Andy died,
Mhm.
his birthday was his birthday. His
Mm.
birthday fell on Easter Sunday, and
Ugh.
I tell you, it's sort of tainted Easter a bit for me. And of course, you say that to people, I'm like, oh, that's so beautiful. His first birthday in heaven. It was Easter. Imagine all the rejoicing in heaven on Easter. Like,
Oh, oh,
okay,
yeah.
really? Because I'm sure that's all true. But for me, it gives me a little
Mhm,
more pain. And
mhm,
it's a little harder
mhm.
to be in this rejoicing mood when I'm just thinking about my son's birthday,
Right.
and the fact that he may be
Mhm.
rejoicing in heaven, but I really want him rejoicing here.
Right.
So,
Well, Mary Pat just wrote, "Easter feels too hard."
yeah,
Mary Pat, I'm reminded of a book that I read called Keepsakes of the Heart, and she, had her husband, son, brother, and dad all die in the same plane crash. And she was invited to a Good Friday, like, outdoor sunrise service, and, they died in the, I think, early fall, so this would have been, what, 6 months
yeah,
later, spring,
yeah.
and she went, and she said, "Everyone's singing praises on this beautiful Good Friday sunrise service," and she
Or
said,
Easter Sunday. Yeah.
no, this was Good
Oh,
Friday, it was
it
a
was
Good
Good Friday.
Friday,
Okay.
sunrise service, and she said it was outdoors. And she said before she knew it, she was rocking back and forth screaming, "I hate you, God. I hate you, God. I hate you, God." And she was having that battle with God as everyone else was singing. And, I don't remember exactly how she tied it up in the book. I remember some other parts of her faith journey, which were amazing, but just that crying out and that questioning is just a part of it too. You and I did a segment on lament, and, we looked at
Yeah.
that crying out. All of worship doesn't look like, "Oh, praise Jesus," or,
Yeah.
so some of it is just that battling it out and where are you? And
Mhm.
um,
Mhm.
yeah, everyone with their families is definitely a hard
Yeah.
one for sure. My daughter
Well,
passed
and
Mother's
then
Day week.
Candace wrote, "My daughter passed
Yeah,
on Mother's Day weekend. That will never be the same."
never.
That's certainly not.
Mm-mm,
Certainly not.
mm-mm. Nope. So
Yeah.
those things are really, really hard.
Well, I wanted to bring up one thing too that so, so everyone's heard us talking about Starlight Ministries. That's where you used to work
Mhm.
before you
Yep.
started your grief guide. You used to be at Starlight Ministries, and I now am a facilitator for a virtual support group that some of these ladies that are watching today are part of that group. So we do have a new 6-week session starting up on it's every Tuesday night, and this first one is April 12th. And the topic for the 6-week session is grief is messy.
Yep.
And I just think that is worth discussing too, because it's a faith-based organization, so we do discuss faith, but to discuss that messiness of
Mhm.
grief is really going to be, I
Yeah,
think, a good discussion and a good, just kind of digging into that a little bit, digging
I
into
do
that
too.
messy.
I'm a little
Mhm.
biased because 'cause I'm the author of the curriculum.
I was gonna say, I think you probably wrote it.
Yeah. Um, but one of the things about that is that we do try to pretty things up for God. Like, we try to hide those parts of our heart that are questioning, like that woman crying out, "I hate you, God." Like, we try to
Yeah.
hide that, and God knows. He sees our heart and our pain. So if we just open that up, that's where the healing can begin. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, she
So
wants to
somebody
know
wrote,
about.
please let me know how to
Yeah.
find this online
Mhm.
group. So what you can do is you can email Stephanie at
I
starlightmin.org, and you want to type that in
I
maybe?
sure will.
Yeah, you type that in, and then if you email Stephanie, then so you have to do a little intake, but then once you do an intake, then you can get into that group and be a part of that. So I think it will really be a
Goodness.
good session. So you're typing it in there, Gwen, and then I'll
Yes.
pop it up on the screen so people watching live can see that. And I'll make sure to write that in the notes on the podcast too, just knowing how people can get involved. So here we go.
Oh.
I
Oh, I did
where's
it and you
it?
did it too.
No,
Okay.
you did it on
Oh,
both,
I see.
but what
Gotcha.
happened was
Did I
you put
spell
it
her name
once
right?
on YouTube and once on Facebook. So it
Okay.
worked out great. So Stephanie at starlightmin.org would be how to get involved in that. But
Great.
it's been
Well,
just
the
a
other
great
thing we
group. It's
should
been beautiful.
probably announce on behalf of Starlight is that their curriculum is for sale now.
Oh
So I
yeah.
don't know where Candace lives, but in their area, they can purchase the curriculum either for individual use or for an
Group use, yeah.
organizational use,
Mhm.
and they can have that same thing and start a small group there and have everything that they need, what to say, what to know, all the stuff is in there. So that
And of
would be
course, if
good.
you are in West Michigan, going to them in person is
Oh,
fantastic because
yeah,
then you can take your kids with you too.
right.
So
Yep.
they have wonderful children's programming that's
Mhm.
awesome that of course we can't offer on the virtual option that I'm doing right
Yeah.
now.
Well, let me tell you this. So knowing that they were Christ-centered, grief support, I would have people, and one happened to be someone that I knew through their parents. I knew their daughter, and their daughter had her child die. And of course I wanted to tell them about Starlight and come and get the support. And they never signed up, but that was fine. They were getting support, but I would continue to meet with the mom. And one time she told me, she said, "You've never asked me why I didn't come to Starlight." And I said, "Well, that's your
Yeah.
choice." And she said, "I couldn't handle that it was faith-based because I was so mad at God. I didn't want to hear that." So I
Yeah.
thanked her for telling me that, because then as I explained to other bereaved parents, is we don't have a set agenda that you have to feel right with the Lord to
No.
come to this.
No. No.
That
No.
we allow for all, like, if you're like, "Hey, I don't see it. I don't want anything to do with it right now," or, we allow for that.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
100%. I
Yeah.
mean, we just had our last session, and I feel like in our group we had a couple of women kind of say, I feel like my faith is stronger, and everybody else said, I don't feel that way at all.
Mhm.
I feel like my faith is so
Mhm.
broken. So if you feel like your faith is broken, don't let that hold you back at
Mhm.
all. Don't let it
Mhm.
hold you back at all, especially on a topic that grief is messy. I mean,
Yeah, because it really
it
is,
is
and we don't have
messy.
to
It is
pretty it up.
messy. It's
Yep.
and even the ones that said their faith was stronger then said, hey, when I say my faith is stronger, it doesn't mean I'm not battling, doesn't mean I'm not struggling. I
Right.
it's just
Mhm.
that's the way that I can cope. Like somebody earlier had said, the faith is the only way I get through, right?
Mhm.
That doesn't mean like, oh, my faith is so much stronger.
Mhm.
I'm doing great. I mean, that's not what that means at all.
Right. Well, when I mentioned, like, the things we do to practice our faith, one of the other things, though, is when we think about, whether it's readings or prayers or those kinds of things, when we're hurting, we don't wanna read. We can't take that in, you know,
Yeah.
um, and then praying, what do you even say? Like, you don't even
Oh,
have
yeah.
the words. So
Yeah.
one of the things that I tell people is our moaning and our groaning and our
Mhm.
wordless prayers, God hears those too
Mhm.
and understands that.
Mhm.
And I'm so glad because there are some days I just say, "Lord, I don't have the words. You
Yeah.
have, you know what I'm thinking. Take it all. I can't speak it today."
Yeah.
Mhm.
There's no doubt about it.
Yeah.
Oh, what am I was gonna look up? 8. So my favorite Bible verse always was
Psalm
some or Romans
46.
8:28.
Oh,
And we
okay.
know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who've been called according to his purpose. Okay, that was always my favorite. For in all things, God works for the good of those. I I can't cling to that like I used to. And
Mhm.
I clung to that. The reason I clung to that verse was after my mother died, actually. So it was when I was in grief. I could
Mhm.
say to myself, there will be good from this. As
Mhm.
much as it hurts, there will be good from this. But then the pain was so intense with Andy that, I couldn't cling to that anymore. And I
Mhm.
started clinging to a verse about God hearing our groanings, which I cannot think of what
Mhm.
that verse is now, right now, but that when we don't have the words to pray,
Mhm. Mhm.
God will hear me groan. And
Yes.
that's what I replaced it with. So I replaced it with this beautiful, like everything works for
Yeah.
good
Yeah.
to
Right.
to all I have to do is groan and know that God's hearing me.
I
And
I I put a few extra words in Romans 8:28 because I've just had to, in the fact that all things work together for good, but I might not see it in my lifetime. All
yeah,
things work together for good, but I might not ever know why. So I'm excluded from the knowledge of how that works, but
yeah,
it's still
yeah.
true, right?
Well, and I'm not saying it's not true. I just
Yes.
can't
No, I
like
know
I
you're
just
not.
don't. I mean,
Mhm.
people used to ask me all the time, "What's your favorite Bible verse?" And that's what I used to say. That's
Oh,
what I used to say. Oh,
yeah, it
okay, here
doesn't
we
say what
go.
book it's from, but it's verses 26 and 27. What is that?
Oh, I think that was
And he
yeah,
searches our
yeah.
hearts and knows the mind of the Spirit. Um,
Yeah, so anyway, I'll put it up. I can show it up on
yeah,
the screen. So just how that the spirit intercedes for us through wordless groans. Yeah, that's
yeah,
beautiful. That's beautiful.
mhm, yeah. Um,
Oh,
yeah,
also in Romans 8, yeah. So it's just a little bit ahead of it.
oh, yeah. Oh, exactly. So you went, okay, that makes sense. Um, yeah, so just knowing that we don't we still like believing in something is and knowing it, um,
Yeah.
but not having it be a feeling or what drives us right then, right? Like you can
Yep.
have hope and feel lost at the same time. You can have joy and sorrow. You can, living in those two realities, especially
hmm
when we're bereaved. That's very true. You can praise God and curse God at the same time.
I, I think I do. I
Yeah.
mean, I think I do often,
Yeah.
right? I mean,
Yeah.
for
You know,
sure. I mean, I've been angry with God, but yet there's no way I could get through without him.
yeah.
And it's funny because you just shared that woman, there was no way she could go to Starlight because she couldn't handle anything faith based.
Mhm.
And yet, when I was looking at Starlight, we also um, put in a like a little application process for a non faith based parent
Mhm.
support group here in Grand Rapids. That's a great group. And
Mhm.
when they called me back to have us go, I said, I think we're going to go with Starlight because I have to have a faith-based one.
Mhm.
Even though I was telling you at the time,
Yeah.
I didn't feel like going to church. I was
Mhm.
mad at God. I wasn't feeling any sort of like love to God. I was just angry. And yet I felt like if I don't go somewhere that is going to give me a sense of hope in
Mhm.
what the kind of curriculum is,
Mhm.
that it doesn't have a little bit of hope in it, then I didn't feel like there was going to be a point.
Mhm.
And maybe they had beautiful hope. I don't know. But I just knew that if I went to a faith-based one, they definitely would have hope.
Right. But see, again, you were practicing even if you didn't feel it or, experience that at that time, you knew you needed that. But, I think it's Demi who says, "I feel like I've lost my hope." We get that. And that's where we almost have to borrow hope from other people. Like, you don't have it, so you have to, you know, just trust that it will be restored and just borrow it from other people and say, "I don't feel it right now." But it will, prayerfully and hopefully be restored. Um,
Oh, I love what Mary Pat just wrote here. I'll put it up on the screen too. I keep thinking of what Elizabeth Elliot said. Don't dig up and doubt what you planned in faith.
yeah.
So yeah, if you had that, it's easy to do sometimes,
Yeah.
but
Well,
to just try. Hmm.
my uncle was a pastor and he said, people would come to me all the time and say, "Why did God have this happen? Why did, this person die? Why did my marriage end? Why did I lose my business? Whatever. Why?" And he said, "Gwen, no one ever came and said, 'Why did we have a healthy child? Why did, I get a good job? Why do I have great health insurance? Why do no one ever questions
Yeah,
the good, but we question what we don't have." But that's that natural protest too
yeah, that's
of
the natural.
something that we love and have that's been taken from us. There's a protest that happens in that. We definitely get that.
Okay,
Um,
and that Mary Pat quote, should have been, "Don't dig up and doubt what you planted in
planted
faith." And that
faith.
does make more sense.
Yeah.
Yes, what you planted
Mhm.
in faith. Hmm.
Yeah. So, you know, I, I know we just have a few more minutes left, and I hope if anyone else has any other questions, but I think expressing our faith, but like I said, practicing even when you don't feel like it. But then that other part for me, for bereaved people, and especially, to me saying, I don't seem to have hope right now, is
Hmm.
to rest in your faith. Like that rest, that place where you can just go and be, and you don't have to perform. You don't have to have a certain level of hope to be a Christ follower. Like it's okay that you're not in that spot, but resting in it. And
Hmm.
there's so many verses where Jesus, he says, "Cast all your cares upon me because I care for you." So he's saying, give it, give it. I care.
Yeah,
What are you worried about?
yeah.
What's stressing you out about your hope here? Um, so we can keep doing that. And then the other part where he says, in Matthew, "Come unto me, all ye who are labor and are of heavy laden, and I will give you rest." Can you tell I memorized in the King James Version as a little kid?
Yes, for sure.
Okay. um, you know, he we can go and just come and be restful.
Right. But I think though to remind the people that that's not a one-time deal. It's
Yeah.
it's again
Yeah.
and again
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
again. I don't know how many times I have to cast my cares,
Right.
but I just have to keep casting them because what do I do? I'm like, okay, I'm gonna let go of this. Okay, I'm just gonna grab it back.
Yeah.
And let go
Oh,
and I grab it back.
absolutely.
And I guess the biggest thing is hopefully every time I give it up, when I take it back, maybe I take back just a little bit less.
Mhm. Well, and the other thing is that we are like children. I mean, he is our heavenly father and we are his children. And how many times do our children keep coming after us and keep coming after us? And because of love, we say, yes, yes, we'll figure it out. Yes, we'll do that. Yes, you can have, more of this, or no, you can't right now. We did that in that loving relationship with our children. Um,
Mhm.
God does that same thing with us. We can keep coming and keep asking. And
Well,
sometimes the answer
and
is
like our
no.
children, when they are, keep messing up and then coming back and messing up and
Mhm.
coming back, we still love them.
Right.
We still love them.
Yeah.
So that's another point too,
Yeah.
that just like we don't give up on our kids, I mean, you don't, right? You don't
Mhm.
give up on your kids.
Right.
And that means God doesn't give up on us either.
No.
And so even though it doesn't feel like you've got hope going on in your life, there's still hope. And
Mhm.
God still knows and believes in you and has hope in you.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
anyway,
I was sitting
any
here
other comments
thinking,
that you had jotted down that
well,
you wanted to bring up
nothing
today?
that I jotted down. I think we covered it. I think, at some point, maybe people can send in their, God winks or moments where they've actually seen their faith restored or their hope renewed, or they've seen, his loving care through other people. That would be really, fun, because
Yeah.
it is good to recall when God has been faithful, because
Mhm.
right now you might not see his faithfulness, but if we can recall past times or hear those.
Well, and then just knowing to look for them too, and
Yeah.
knowing that a lot of times it is
Mhm.
just that right message
Mm,
from a random stranger at the right
yeah,
time. Little things can really kind of bring you just a tiny bit of peace when you're in
yeah.
this.
I love the song, "Great is thy faithfulness, morning by morning new mercies I see," where his mercies are new every morning, and I thank God for that, our pain and our sorrow that are dried on our pillow from last night, that there's mercy in the morning, and, it it's there. Ask for it, and I think to plead out for to God and tell him what you're looking for, is a good thing too. We tell him our hurts and our pains, but we can tell him our longings.
Mhm. Mhm.
Mhm. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Gwen, for joining
You're
me
welcome.
today. I just always love our conversations. So thank
Mhm.
you. And then I look forward to the next time the two of us are
Oh,
talking.
wait, do we have 1 minute to read this? It says,
Sure.
um, I was sent
Okay.
a coworker this year who was new to our team. There you go.
Hmm.
I told her about losing my baby girl, and she asked me if she could pray for my family. She is my God wink when I needed her. That's
Oh,
beautiful.
that
Yeah.
is beautiful. Thank you, Demetra, for sending
You know,
that.
and the other interesting thing about that's a good point that we didn't share, is that ask other people to pray for you when you can't pray for yourself.
Well, and she didn't even do that.
Right,
See,
exactly,
that I just told her about my
right,
baby girl,
and then she
and she
asked. Yeah,
asked if she could
yeah,
pray. So that's even
mhm,
more beautiful,
yeah,
right? But you're
mhm,
right. You can ask people. It's just hard to do
mhm,
that.
mhm,
At least for me. Maybe for others, it's not
yeah.
a difficult thing. For me, it's hard to ask people to pray for me.
I think, I know we do have to close, but I think again, when I think of, um, being in the depths of our pain, people often say to me, "Isn't that awful? And do I'd love to take that away for people and I can't. But I've also come to the conclusion that it's in the depths of pain that people see God. And if I
Hmm.
took that away, I'd take that experience of them meeting God."
Well, and that's a good point too. I do want to make one more point because I met with Pastor Gail today. I was telling
Mhm,
you, and he does spiritual care and spiritual work, and I've been meeting with him, and it's been really helpful to me.
mhm,
But one of the things he said today was, "I wish I could take your pain away."
mhm.
And I said, "I really don't want you to do that." Exactly.
Yeah.
I I do want to be able to feel more peace and
Mhm,
feel better, but taking that away is
mhm.
not the right thing. That pain will always be with me. Now, it will not always be the same. It will not always look the same, but
Right.
you could tell in some ways that
Um,
he's a great guy, but not a bereaved person. Really, to
right,
know that
right.
that that taking it away is not what I want. I want you people
Yeah.
to understand it. I want it to not overwhelm me, but I need to
Mhm.
feel it. I need to
Yeah.
feel it.
I
Hmm.
put the link to Spiritual Care just because I know they also have Zoom and virtual meetings available, so if someone
Yeah,
wanted
and
to get
they,
on their
like I said,
resource.
they've done wonderful things for
Because
me.
the part of that
Hmm.
is sometimes, and I think this is good for us to mention, sometimes people's spiritual wounds are really deep.
Yeah.
They're beyond what you and I covered today and talked about, and they're deep. And at Spiritual Care, they help take that out, but then clean that wound and go to those places in
Yeah.
a way that you and I didn't or can't in this time. So providing that resource, I think, is really good. And they have
Well,
a healing podcast. You've been
they
on
do.
it.
I was just going to say they have
Yeah.
a podcast
Yep.
too, and the podcast episode that you're basically talking about is there's one called Soul Slivers.
Yes.
So
Yep.
that you have a
Mhm.
sliver in your soul and you have to
Yeah.
take out the sliver, and it'll hurt to take out the sliver, but before you can heal, that soul
Mhm.
sliver has to come out. So that's a
Yeah.
great episode if you want to get on spiritual care consultants and do
Right.
that. But we are definitely out of
We
time
are.
because my clock's
Okay.
going
Take
off
care.
again. So I probably ought to
Take
go.
care,
But thank
ladies
you
and
so
gentlemen.
much. And I
Yep.
will see you next time.
Bye-bye.